Now we will introduce your Northern Great Plains technical assistance providers. So I'll hand the mic to Allison.
We have a question
Oh,
in the chat.
can you read it for me?
Yeah, it's for Jeff and Lynette. The Comet tool is really handy for croplands and big management changes. How practical do you think it will be for quantifying grazing lands in the Great Plains?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we've seen in California is that the Comet Planner, we think, significantly underestimates the benefits of improved grazing practices. Um, it's a blunt instrument, I guess I would say, for that purpose. We envision working with hopefully some local data in your region to try to come up with some better acreage per acre estimates for carbon sequestration. I know there's been some interesting work done out of University of Alberta, but I'm sure there's also even more local information that we can draw on to try to quantify that a little more accurately. Again, the Comet tools are great, but they tend to be very generic in their application, and particularly with respect to grazing, we've seen fairly consistent underestimates on what the benefits of improved grazing practices can be. So great question. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? All right, so now I'll pass the mic to Allison.
All right, so now we're going to get a little bit into the Northern Great Plains region, and so we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Allison Cooley, AG. I live in Big Timber. A little bit of background about me. I got my bachelor's at Montana State in sustainable food and bioenergy systems, and my focus was really on agroecology and like soil health systems. I think my excitement about this project is really, I'm excited because I want to help producers get money and get out on the ground to make a difference in their own personal soil health. Alicia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Horak, and I am located centrally in South Dakota, just near Huron. My previous experience has been, I've worked with NRCS for the last 4 years, and I've got my bachelor's degree in natural resource management and my master's in applied ecology. And I'm just looking forward to continuing to work with farmers and ranchers out on the landscape. It's always great to see a good success story once everything comes to fruition.
My name's Danielle Dunai, and I need to, I've recently married, so I will change my last name to Proctor here soon. I have a master's in range management, and I have been managing the Montana State University sheep flock for the last couple of years. I'm really excited to continue to work with ranchers and get some dollars in your hands to hopefully make some improvements on your places, as well as looking into the premium markets for your wool and hopefully keeping more wool sheep on our rangelands.
We can go to the next slide. So our goals for the Northern Great Plains in this project is to enroll about 1.8 million managed acres, and we want to open premium markets for about 185,000 pounds of fine white wool in the next 4 years. And we want to have 40% of our producers be historically underserved or small. And we're looking to sequester about 2 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. We can go on to the next slide. So you've probably seen this graphic before. This is just kind of the process that you go through when you're working with us. We start with enrollment, which practically everyone that's here today has been accepted already. And so you've gone through that stage. And then carbon farm planning, as Lynette and Jeff described to us, is the next step. And then after carbon farm planning, we get into practice implementation, where we can get those dollars into your hands using the NRCS specifications and standards to help you implement those practices on your landscape. Next slide, please. So we wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of our application process. So you can see at the top here, we've got like you fill out your application, and then it goes through our regional review, and then it goes through a national review, and then you get your acceptance email from Alona. So in our regional review, this is what we're looking at when we're scoring applications. We actually have a rubric that we just run your information through, and that's based on the total acreage you have under management, whether you're historically underserved or a small producer, your potential to produce fine white wool, and your potential for greenhouse gas reduction on your property. And then you can see down below, we have like shovel readiness, which is like, do you have the time and ability to work with us, and your ability to serve as like a demonstration site or ambassador. Next slide. So then we submit to national review, and that is our other teammates at NCAT. So that's Elise and Ilona and Mike, the project director. And so they make sure to look through everything, make sure everything's squared away, that our rubric makes sense, that that your information makes sense on the application. And that's when Ilona gets to send you the agreement and the other paperwork that's needed for acceptance. Next slide, please. So from you, what we need in acceptance is the signed contract, a completed W-9, and the FSA information release waiver. And so we need that FSA waiver just to get your subsidiary print and your farm producer data report, and also some mapping information from FSA if they have that data. So once we have this paperwork from you, then we can send you your first stipend payment of $1,000 to begin the carbon farm planning process. You can go to the next slide. So this, for the ranch plans, the carbon farm planning process, each planner is working with about 3 to 4 producers per year. So we can't get to everyone right away. But to begin your ranch plan, we're gonna, like Lynna described, we're gonna collect a bunch of site info, like your climate data, soil information, ecological sites, and then we'll come to your ranch to do a resource inventory and just collect some data, so we kind of know your operation and know what you have going on there. And then we'll also talk with you and kind of identify your short and long-term goals. So this inventory and analysis you can see circled here, this is what we need to have completed before we can move on to practice implementation.
So once we've done that on-site visit, as Allison alluded to, we start to then dive into decision-making. So when we start to look at this, we're going to look at your whole farm when we're doing our planning process, and then we're going to have an implementation plan also. All of this will be reviewed between your technical assistance provider and yourself. This is where you're going to choose what practices you would like to implement and what fields you would like that to be done on. So we use a lot of the NRCS practice standards. That's what we get to choose from. And once you're kind of narrowing down that decision making, we'll have you sign the conservation practice standard document, which then is saying that you agree to implement that practice per the NRCS standards and specs. And then if you're ever curious about, well, I don't know what I can do on my farm, I'm not sure what these practices are, what they mean, and what they all entail, this is a publicly available website. So I've posted the link here, and you could just go to Google and just type in NRCS Field Office Technical Guide, and this will pop up on Google for you. You can go to section 4 is where you're looking for these practices, and they're called the Conservation Practice Standards and Support Documents. So each state has their own, and they might be a little bit different in what they require. And so they're going to pop up all of the different practices that NRCS offers. Now, we don't necessarily offer all of those practices, so I just advise you to go ahead and talk with your technical assistance provider to see if that's something that our program can offer you assistance with. Once you get in there and you pick a practice, for example, I've listed cover crop here. Each practice will kind of go through and it'll tell you the different criteria. So what resource concerns does this practice address? What's the definition? What purpose does it serve? And then any considerations that you want to take when implementing this. For instance, cover crop can serve multiple purposes. It can help you to reduce erosion, help with compaction, or increase soil organic matter. And so there's usually a few different items that you should think about when we're looking to install these practices. It'll then outline what the plans and specifications are that we'll need to adhere to, and any operation and maintenance advice for you as well. So from there, once you figure out which practices that you think will work best for your operation, we need to complete those to NRCS practice specs and standards like we've alluded to before. So the producer then will implement that practice. So you'll go out and you'll plant this cover crop, for example, and then we're going to need you to submit the verification that yes, you did install it and you did it correctly. So for example, I've listed here the cover crop code, and it lists out the required documentation. So some examples is that we would need seed tags from you, which can just be a photo of the seed tag. And then we might also need some documentation showing that you had purchased the seed and what rate it was purchased at. So something just like a receipt from the local co-op, that'll work just fine. Once we've verified that we have all the information we need from you to have that practice successfully be implemented, NCAT will pay out the producer that cost share rate. And then we, as the technical assistance providers, will continue to monitor the progress and success of that for our USDA trend reporting. And then just so everyone else is aware in the background, what us technical assistance providers are doing is that we're also having to submit an environmental assessment to USDA. And some things that includes is any culture resource information. So if you're near a historical site or you have any Native American artifacts on your land, we do want to notate that and be aware that we can avoid some of those sites. And then we also look for threatened and endangered species and any habitat that we might be coming into contact with. So we're going to fill all of that out on your behalf. And we also fill out the field enrollment form. So what fields you decide that you would like to implement something on. And then the national team reviews that plan of what you're going to practice and then looks at, make sure we have everything right in the budget. And once that gets approved, then you will sign the approved field enrollment contract with us. And lastly here, if you're curious on cost share payment schedules, this also is public information that you can sure Google or use the website provided. We do base our payments off of your local state's EQIP schedule. So you go to the NRCS website, look for payment schedules and find your applicable state, and then it will break it out based on the different practices. So the cover crop in South Dakota may not pay the same as a cover crop in Montana or Wyoming.
And here's our contact information, which you all have already, but please feel free to contact us if you have any questions, or as we go, we'll begin to work together quite often. So with that, and our website will continue to stay updated, which is fiberpartnership.ncat.org.